All right, episode 1 of Young Gun. I'm Demetri Ravanos. She is Lauren Brownlow. It's a Carolina Panthers podcast about Bryce Young and Brownlow. I don't know about you. I'm not sure we have a lot to talk about after week 1 of the preseason.
You'd be surprised, right? I know you don't, there's not a lot of like broad conclusions to draw, I don't think, about Bryce Young, the quarterback, but maybe some signs for concern elsewhere. I know it's preseason and you're supposed to say you don't care. That's why I feel that way about the defense, letting the Jets get all up and down the field. Yes. I didn't panic about that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know that they got some guys out and whatever. But the O-line, well.
Yeah, we'll get to all that in a second, but we're going to start every episode with a question that people have been asking since the moment Bryce Young was clearly going to be the number 1 pick. Lauren, in week 1 of the preseason, a 27-0 loss to the Jets. Was Bryce Young too short?
Yes. No, I mean, I'm half joking. I only say that because there was a picture that came out from Stephen Reich on Twitter, is who I saw it from, of Bryce standing very blatantly, and I know this stance very well as a short person myself, straight on the tiptoes. I saw someone put it next to the Barbie where she can't put her foot down situation. He's straight on 2 tiptoes. My concern with it was it didn't look like he needed to, so it almost seemed like a habit.
It's habit, right?
And then there was another shot similar from his Alabama days where he was also on his tiptoes. I don't know if he was under more duress in that shot, but still, I was like, you can see, buddy. And I know I do this. I default to it sometimes too. As a short person, it's like, oh, I don't need to be on my tiptoes. And sometimes you just go. You know,
what's funny is there was a moment that I thought, oh, that is short guy stuff all the way. Because for all the jokes that I make about him being, my sweet tiny prince, my adult son. He is
adorable.
Agreed. There was a moment where I thought, oh, that is some little kid trying to play with the big kid shit. And that was when he overthrew DJ Chark by about 3 stories on the sideline.
Yeah.
And look, he is going to calm that down. I'm confident he is going to be better going forward. But that was a moment that was very much I am shorter than a lot of these people, and the game is moving a lot faster than I'm used to.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like he wasn't necessarily, and just like I wouldn't have, I don't know that I would go into a game like that expecting that one of your best linemen's gonna, maybe struggle a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe you're not expecting pressure to come from that way because it's icky, taking care of that. I don't know. I mean, who knows? But overall, I mean, he seemed fine. He definitely, you could chalk that one up to nerves maybe a little bit or sailing it. That happens, but nothing else from him individually that would be that concerning, unless like, I don't know, I'm not a pocket mechanics expert. Like, is that bad to routinely do? I feel like it's not great.
I also am not a pocket mechanics expert. I would like to think of myself as something of, not an expert, but certainly a learned observer of Bryce Young. And if it works for him, why does he need to change it?
Then you know what? Yeah, and we'll see. Yeah, did it make me a little nervous with it? Because you know me, completely. I'm not a short person. I'm like, okay, I don't care if you're short. Drew Brees was a tiny, person.
Man, yes.
Like he still gave the Panthers nightmares for years. I'm not worried just that you're short, but when I saw the tiptoes situation, I was a little bit like, oh, is that bad? I don't know.
Ironically, Baker Mayfield, also a tiny person that gave the Panthers nightmares, just in a different way.
Well, and he had like real short person problems.
Yes, agreed.
And played short.
Yeah.
I didn't see any passes get batted down. So already he's way ahead of Baker in that department.
And, that's one of the things that when people talk about, is he too short? Now, he started 2 full seasons at Alabama, Bryce Young did. And I can only ever remember 2 balls being batted down at the line.
Oh, bless. Because I can't take any more.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I've never really bought the too short thing. Speaking of what I saw at Alabama, and you mentioned the picture that Stephen Reich tweeted with, on what we saw on Saturday versus what we saw last year when Alabama played Texas. And you were right. It was a 1-for-1 shot. There were a couple of other 1-for-1 things I saw from Bama Bryce.
Okay.
Most of it good, but there was some bad. I think one thing that I always like about him is he knows every single step of the quarterback's assignment on a play. So even on that first handoff, when he hands off to Chuba Hubbard, and it's obvious a handoff to Chuba Hubbard, right? He still immediately flips into position like he's going to throw the ball just on the off chance that it fools someone. That is not Bama Bryce. That is probably matter day high school Bryce that learned that. But it's something.
It's like mechanical to him at this point.
It's
Muscle
something
memory.
He's done forever. Yep. The biggest thing that, and I know this is not something we want to see a lot because we don't want to see that much pressure on him in the future, and we want to see him succeed. But Bryce, I think, understands he is small better than any of us, right? And he is willing to take a sack when he is beaten. Because he certainly missed that game last year, or was it against Arkansas? Or I'm sorry, he got injured against Arkansas and missed all of the A&M game because he did not accept that he had been beaten. He took that sack when he just got overwhelmed very quickly. Not a great thing. We don't want to see a lot of it, but I would rather see that than see him put himself in a position to get hurt.
Look, the first sack was one thing. He just bounced right back up. And in that case, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, that was a nice moment for him. I felt, or not the first sack, but the first hit he took. Like that, he bounces right back up. That was
the one on the completion to Adam Thielen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he stood in, took the hit anyway. I was happy to see that. But as they keep piling up, you're kind of like, okay, it's not as fun anymore.
Agreed wholeheartedly. The bad Bryce, not that we saw a lot of it at Bama, but this is one thing that I actually look back through. I have a text message thread that I'm on with my 2 college roommates every Saturday during the football season.
Did you just say Roll Tide?
Mostly.
I figured.
But I did want to sort of do a search for how many times I pointed this out last year, and it was 5 times. On screen passes, Bryce puts a lot of air under his screen passes.
Interesting.
And so whatever, and last year, obviously, it was Jahmyr Gibbs at Alabama. I think it was Shuba Hubbard that he was attempting to throw the screen to this week. It eliminates all the time those guys have that they could have caught the defense napping.
Right.
It gives the defense time to close in. And obviously, in worst case scenario, we haven't seen it yet, but the NFL is a completely different animal. At some point, that's going to turn into a pick 6.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. But no, it absolutely will. If they know, and especially if it keeps showing up on tape, because they're going to immediately seize on that.
Right. So that is what I saw from what I've known following Bryce for the last couple of years at Alabama. What, if anything, did we learn new about Bryce Young this week?
I think I wasn't as concerned that he might die.
I was.
Well, I mean, look, you know me. I'm a pessimist when it comes to the Panthers. I tend to be, but that's only because I'm afraid of being hurt. I'm a softie deep down. I want to love. And I went into this game not thinking the Panthers had an amazing O-line by any stretch. And I knew some guys were not going to be playing and things like that. I think it's just the fact that it was Ike Ekwonu who struggled after he had such a great close to the season last year. And he's finally rounding into form of that top draft pick, and you're like, okay, they're solving some problems on the O-line. And it's just one preseason game. And by the way, it's fair to point out that we don't understand. I will be the first to admit I don't understand a lot of the mechanics of all how the offensive line works. Who sacks are on, I think, is a lot more complicated of a question than we always know how to answer.
So to put this in Panthers terms, it is much harder to directly point the finger at Ike Ekwonu for allowing that pressure than it is to say, look back to Super Bowl 50 and see Michael Orr sliding across the field.
Yeah.
Right. We know what the problem is.
God, yeah. Being put on roller skates. Exactly. And thinking about all the lines that Cam Newton had over the years that were just horrendous. And you could watch him take the hits because he was so big. And so you looked at him and you're like, oh, he's fine. He'll be fine. Whereas Bryce, you're like, oh no. And I know he's tougher than he looks.
And you know, what's funny is I had a very similar thought because after taking that first hit, the one that he took it did. That hit he took after throwing the completion, I had a little bit of a flashback to Cam because just like Cam, he got up smiling. The difference is with Cam, I believe he's like, oh, you think that hurt me? With Bryce, I was worried he was putting on a brave face.
Yeah. And I think as cool as it is that he can take a hit and stand in and still make a play, you don't want, physics, science, whatever. I don't know. Eventually, a dude who's coming at you at that speed, who's bigger than you by a certain, it's going to hurt you.
Right. And I think anybody that has played at a high level will tell you that even the biggest of dudes, it is a matter of time before that hit happens. And it's hard as much as I trust
it happened
Bryce.
To Cam too. Eventually,
absolutely.
The shoulder got destroyed, and that was that.
Yeah. As much as I believe that Bryce is going to be a success in this league, you can't divorce yourself from that when you are watching him take those hits. I felt kind of bad for Icky in that situation, only because, and this was not something he had control of. Literally the snap before, he allowed that pressure to get through. Steve Smith was saying on the broadcast that this was the year he was going to establish himself as good as any left tackle in the NFL.
Don't think I didn't notice that. That's Panther stuff right there. That's what that is.
So tell me who was out that you think would have made
one of the starters,
difference.
Is it Austin Corbin? I want to say his last name was, but I know at least one starter was out on the O-line, was sitting.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have some other guys as well, but it wasn't like, it wasn't as still Icky. It's because Icky struggled. Like, again, if it were like someone like if it were just Michael Jordan struggling out there, who people, think is fine, but not like no one would think that much, I don't think, about it. But because it's Icky, you go, oh no, is he okay? Is he actually terrible? We don't know. This is the anxiety of being a Panthers fan too, right?
For sure. So this is the anxiety here of being a Bryce fan. And I know I have told you this privately, and obviously this being our first episode, I haven't said it on this show, but I have done some work with a radio station down in Jacksonville. So I've been paying attention to the Panthers, the Jaguars the last couple of years. And it is not lost on me that it is very clear the Panthers paid attention to the year the Jaguars wasted with Trevor Lawrence before they got an adult to be their head coach and NFL people that understand being a quarterback in the room. But the other part is the Panthers didn't draft, or I'm sorry, I keep confusing them because
how dare you? They did, to be fair,
came in at the same time, and they are both cats.
They are, and they both have teal.
The Jaguars did not draft their franchise left tackle beforehand.
Yeah.
So I got to be honest and say I was watching this thinking, okay, the Panthers shored up every mistake the Jaguars made. And even I will admit, as much as I like Bryce, he is not the once-in-a-lifetime quarterback prospect that Trevor Lawrence was, but I thought all of the infrastructure was in place. And I'm not giving up after one game on Icky, but
no,
I was worried.
Yeah, it concerned me for sure. And I think, I think bigger picture wise too, it's concerning because you don't want, the offense was so sad last year. And that's the thing. You don't want to watch an offense. It doesn't matter. I know defense wins games. That's cute. We all understand that.
Right.
We get it. You still don't want to see your team go 3 and out constantly and be inept offensively. And so to see them kind of look like that, again, I know it's the Jets, it's a really good defensive line, all of that stuff. It's the preseason, and they said they were being vanilla. I know, but at the same time, it's like, ugh, we have to watch this again.
So let me ask you about that being vanilla, because Bryce's stat line was 4 of 6 for 21 yards, right? They didn't ask him to do very much. I don't even think he threw a pass across the first down line.
Definitely, yeah.
I think Thielen's first down was him sort of turning around and diving. Do you think that was always the game plan, or do you think some of that was a response to what the offensive line was giving him?
I think probably my guess is some of both. I think maybe they would have let them open things up a little bit more if things had started better.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have to realize, okay, let's see how hard he got hit on that first one. Maybe those downfield shots aren't going to work today. Maybe we can retire that. Save that for later. Let's just bookmark it.
Yeah. And I guess I'm not disappointed necessarily. Like, first preseason game of your career, I don't expect us to learn a ton, right? But I've listened to Giglio tell me over and over again, well, Bryce doesn't have the arm. It's like, yeah, he does. You're not giving him credit. And I want him to show that off in Carolina. And, again, not surprised he didn't get the opportunity to on Saturday. Really, at the back of my mind, bottom of my heart, was really hoping he would, but not surprised he did.
And I know there were a few times with some incompletions and stuff that Steve Smith even mentioned miscommunication with wide receivers. Yep. That's to be expected. But then I at least one, I don't remember who it was, but he said he didn't get the separation he needed to get. And I'm like, well, now we're back to that era of Carolina Panthers football where they have wide receivers that can't get separation.
I'm pretty sure that was also Chark. It was a different incompletion, but it was also Chark, which is interesting because I'll bring this audio for our next show, but I talked to Mina Kimes last month for a show I was doing down in South Carolina, and she is very high on that is the alpha receiver this year.
Really?
I had the same reaction, but I trust that she knows more than me.
Okay. Yeah, I do. I mean, I do too. I have a lot of respect for her. I'm just like, well, didn't think that was coming.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about this quote you brought in from Cam Irving from the folks at Carolina Blitz. He was very blunt about the conversation after the game.
Yeah, no, he went straight in on the offensive line. That basically, to sum up the quote, as Carolina Blitz said, that shit wasn't good enough.
Yeah. James Campen called the team in after the game, called the offensive line in. And Cam Irving says, Camp called us in and we just talked. We had to keep it real with each other. That shit wasn't good enough. Veteran backup tackle Cam Irving said, top to bottom, it doesn't matter if it was preseason, regular season, or off season. The shit was not good enough at any level from any position, myself included, especially myself. All we can do is come back, try to regroup, and effing fix it.
That's my offensive lineman. No, yeah. I do. I like that, though.
I agree.
And Cam Irving, he's always kept it a buck, as the kids say. He's always kept it 100. He does not mince words. And that was my feeling as well. Like, I get that it's preseason, but like, that was not an acceptable performance by any, if for no other reason, then you don't want the number one pick in the draft to be killed before your season begins.
That is bad management of your investment.
Correct.
Let's talk about the running game. Chuba Hubbard got the bulk of the carries. We knew before the game Miles Sanders wasn't going to play. I want Chuba to be so much better than he is.
I feel the same. Because I loved him.
I loved him at Oklahoma State. I love that he stood up to his coach. I love the way he played. I think that he is built for a different era of football, right?
I was going to say, like, I think if this were a league where you were passing more to your running backs, it would be better for him as well. But that's just not something the NFL does as much, depending. And I don't know. It just, he hasn't, as a between the tackles runner, it's just not. It's not there.
Which is interesting because I think that body type, he does have the body type to be that bellwether back of old.
He looks the part, 100%.
Right? They're just not going to use him that way. Miles Sanders was a huge part of, Jalen Hurts' development last year in Philadelphia. So we hold out a lot of hope that they are going to work a little bit more of that running back as a real wide receiver threat into the offense. Certainly, it's something we've seen Bryce do at Alabama. I think last year more out of necessity than out of that being their, what he wanted to do. But he can do it. He can make that work.
Yeah, I mean, if they can make it work, I think it would be a good thing, especially if the offensive line continues to struggle, because that's always an outlet for you. And if you have a guy that can make plays, which in theory Chuba can, that would be even better. But yeah, I mean, everything else, though, just running it straight up on the ground, this is not. Not happening. But, it's not like anything else with the offensive line was easy in this game. So not going to put it all in Chuba there. But yeah.
So I want to ask you this before we start to wrap the show for today. Taylor Zarzour, who is the voice of the preseason for the Panthers, made this point as the Panthers were getting ready to take the field that Frank Reich had told he and Steve Smith before the game that if you think about where Bryce played college football, where he played high school football, it is very likely this is the first time Bryce will come in as an underdog to most of the games he is playing this season. I think that is probably fair for people that don't know. Like, obviously, Alabama has a national profile.
It doesn't matter if Alabama should lose, too. It's like the Cowboys.
Right. Agreed.
A little bit. It's not as bad as the Cowboys.
Agreed.
Because Alabama's won more recently.
Thank you for acknowledging our greatness. Yes. If you think back to the 2022, like after the 2021 season college football playoff game, like Georgia was so much better than that Alabama team. And Alabama lost
still favored,
because they lost their top receiving option.
Right.
The end. Right. Matter Day, for people that don't know, is a decades long dominant kind of high school football program. Like, that is the kind of place great players are picked to go to. Not we were zoned here, so I'm the quarterback now.
Right.
It's going to be really interesting to see how quarterbacks react to that. Like, again, I go back to the Jaguars. Like, Trevor Lawrence has talked openly about that was a struggle for him coming to the Jaguars because he was at the same kind of program when he was a high schooler in Georgia. I think that as much as we talk about Bryce's football intelligence being elite, that's not one of those things that you just have, right? That your football intelligence being elite means it's got to keep growing.
Yes, 100%.
Because what was elite, even in the SEC, is probably middle of the road in the NFL.
Yeah, you have to keep working. You have to be, I mean, it's the cliche, but especially as a quarterback, you have to do a lot of study in terms of film and stuff like that. You have to be doing all those kinds of things to get better constantly in the NFL. And then experience. I mean, that's the invaluable part of it. And so I get that they want to get him out there and get some reps and stuff. And they to be fair to the staff, they took him out exactly when I said. I was like, please do not put him back in. football game, I am afraid. And that was at the point where they didn't put him back in again. And so, yeah, but I just wonder, and I hope I'm wrong, I just wonder how many meaningful preseason reps he's going to be able to get if this is the way. I mean, hopefully the offensive line can play better. It's hard to get worse than what they did.
And listen, I'll be the first to admit that I think a lot of us, and I'm not including you, I mean like all of us that follow football, we're still trying to figure out what the schedule is of just 3 preseason games, of exactly when it is that you say enough, we're not playing the starter.
You know, or do they have that with him?
Right.
Do these teams all handle it differently? Like, do they decide, okay, we need to play Bryce the entire second or third preseason, whichever one, you know, do they play him a whole game or most of a game? Do they play him a half? I don't know. There's a lot of opportunities there to figure that out, but I mean, I don't know how many reps I wanted to play. It's going to play this.
Yeah, I know. Like, cause you got to get to game speed, right? But at the same time,
that's the balancing act.
For sure. All right. So what improvements do we want to see next week? Let's start with Bryce.
I think, you know, like you pointed out with the screen pass, sailing that one, it doesn't look like he's going to have a whole lot of margin for error when it comes to this group, you know, and the guys he's got around him, at least right now. So definitely accuracy on throws like that. This isn't so much Bryce specific as it is like the play calling, but I would love to see at least a play. Like, let's see the arm a little bit, even if it's just a play or taking a shot. Like, let's see it. Let's get it on display. I like to at least see that and see them take a few chances now that he's gotten his feet under him a little bit.
I think one improvement I would like to see, and this is not even necessarily just about last week, this is about what I know of Bryce as a quarterback and just stepping up to a different level now, right? Bryce does have elite football intelligence. And at Alabama, there were times I thought that he was so confident that the play was going to be there, that he was going to be able to make the throw if he just got one more second, that he didn't take off when he should have taken off, because he can run. Not the fastest guy on the football field, but he's fast enough to make a play with his legs, right? Obviously that time frame is much smaller in the NFL. So while I don't want him to panic, I want him to trust that sometimes you are going to have to be the one to make this play.
Yes, I would agree with that. And it's interesting, because there are some quarterbacks like that will, you know, take a hit waiting too long for something because they feel like they can make it happen. Or like you said, the football savvy of like, no, I know it's supposed to work out this way. So I know if I just wait a little bit longer, and it's like, you don't have that extra half second in the NFL. You probably have even less than that. So
for sure.
Yeah, I think he'll develop some of that timing probably too as he gets further along. But you're saying he's almost a little bit more academic about it.
100%. 100%. Because
you can't do that in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, look, how many times did you ever see him blame a receiver for the timing being like, he just doesn't do
faces.
that. Right. Right. That's what I mean. When did you see it?
Well,
right?
and his quotes about the offensive line were very positive and very much like, hey, it's on all of us, blah, blah, blah. And there's some truth in what he's saying. It's not completely quarterback speak, but let's be real. We all saw the football game, and it was not the best for him from an O-line perspective.
So let's put the O-line on a shelf, because obviously we have to see improvement there. That might be, they might just need a week to think about what they've done wrong.
Exactly.
What other improvements would make a big difference, not just for Bryce, but for your confidence in this team?
I mean, I definitely think you need somewhat of a run game to support. I mean, they had, and that's the thing, even with Christian McCaffrey, the Panthers struggled with that now for a while. It was almost like they forgot they had Christian McCaffrey half the time, or he was hurt, which, you know, split the difference.
I mean,
it was about the same.
And I know Christian McCaffrey got traded halfway through the year last year, but like that is exactly the reason why I find it so hard to believe Pro Football Focus says this was one of the 10 best offensive lines in the NFL last year.
Okay, yeah. I'm don't get me started on that, the Pro Football Focus thing, because I know players hate that too. It's a whole thing. But yeah, I mean, I that's obviously a concern. But I think the Panthers too, for a long time, even going back to Cam Newton, they have suffered under this thing where it's like their quarterback has to be their entire offense. Like Cam Newton had to run it. He had to throw to bad receivers half the time. He had a bad O-line blocking for him, but Cam had to be the one to make things happen. And then they've had a lot of terrible quarterbacks that aren't good enough to be the entire offense. And yet there they were. Yeah. You know, there was no support. And I think putting Bryce in that position is not a recipe for success. And they've got to figure out who those other pieces are on the offense, whether they are just people that can be supports for him and not people that he has to kind of drag along with him, because he's not going to be that kind of guy. He can't be their entire rushing and passing offense. That's not sustainable in any level.
Yeah. I think like whether it was Bryce, whether it was going to be CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, whoever.
Yeah.
Acquiring the number one pick was their big move of the offseason, right? Everything else they did was they added really nice pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like they added the guy, whether it's Hayden Hurst, whether it is, I mean, look, Thielen has aged out of his prime. DJ Chark, like you and I are not as high on him as Mina Kimes seems to be.
I hear Pink Fong every time I I sing his name to Baby Shark.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about Baby Shark all day. So I already... He's got that working against him. It's not his fault.
No, 100%. But either way, like whether it is his time in Jacksonville, whether it was his time in Detroit, which I guess the numbers say was much more impressive than it looked like. Like
I never was a huge,
I feel like we have a lot of pieces that can be good. We don't have a piece that can be great. So I need to see some more creative play calling. Frankly.
I feel like their receiver room is like a lot of guys that you'd be like, oh, I'm thrilled to get him as my second or third fantasy receiver.
Right?
And it's like, yeah, but where's the first one?
Yeah, it's like a Comic-Con. They aren't stars, but like you would pay $20 for their autograph.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's where we put a bow on it for this week. Look, the episodes, I promise you folks, will get better. We both agree that there's just not a lot concrete to say right now.
We didn't get any great outfit work from Bryce Young. So already, he's got a lot of work to do to catch Cam Newton there.
I think at some point we need to dive into Frank Reich's metaphors for Bryce, because we want him to be Steph Curry thing. Like, dude, I don't think you know who Steph Curry is. This idea.
That's who I want my field goal kicker to be, because they both get you threes.
Lauren Brownlow. Why even try to finish it from there? That's where we stop.